Justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Chauvin is in the courtroom, but America's on trial.
Mr. Derek Chauvin betrayed this badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd.
Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career.
You will learn what happened in that 9 minutes and 29 seconds. The most important numbers you will hear in this trial are 929.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
Over 14 days, witnesses took the stand.
It's been nights. I stayed up apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not saving his life.
What was going through your mind during that time period?
Disbelief. Thank God.
I feel helpless.
Police experts on Chauvin's use of force.
No reasonable officer would have believed that that was an appropriate, acceptable, or reasonable use of force.
That in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy, it is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
The defence calling in their own medical experts.
Mr. Floyd had a cardiac arrhythmia due to his atherosclerotic and hypertensive heart disease. He would have the fentanyl and methamphetamine, exposure to a vehicle exhaust, all of those combined to cause Mr. Floyd's death.
And on the 14th day, Chauvin opted not to testify.
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe.
You were told that Mr. Floyd died because his heart was too big. The truth of the matter is, George Floyd is dead because Mr. Chauvin's heart was too small.
You can believe your eyes. This wasn't policing. This was murder. And there's no excuse.
And in the words of George Floyd's daughter, my daddy will change the world. This verdict today changes the world.
George Floyd! George Floyd!
Michael Williams has been following the trial closely and he joins us now to talk about it. Michael, a lot of really emotional moments there. What have been some of the standouts for you?
Some of the standouts, as you say, some of the more emotional moments stood out. I believe Charles McMillan is his name, a man who witnessed almost the entire event. I think he was the first on the scene, and him breaking down on the stand in tears because he were in remembering George Floyd begging for his mother, calling for his mother. But maybe the most, I think, striking testimony for me was the number of police officers, the number of people who were on or connected to the police force who came out and said that this officer, Derek Chauvin, did something wrong. He did something that was not connected to what we do or who we are. And typically in these types of police trials, the reason it's so hard, forget about getting a conviction, even coming to trial, is because the police force seems to cover for one another and always see that there's a justification for this type of violence. But in this case, he was fired. The police chief on the stand came out and said, no, this is not what we do. People who were in the department said, no, this was not what we do. He killed someone. So the fact that people crossed that thin blue line to represent justice really stood out for me.
The Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters has given this message to protesters. Have a look at this.
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Do you think those comments could be grounds for the defence to appeal the verdict?
That's what the judge said, and that's what's important. The judge introduced that, well, actually, it was the defense who moved for a mistrial, and the judge said that, yes, maybe it's grounds for a mistrial. I think, at the very least, what it was a ham-fisted, ill-advised, really clumsy, borderline stupid way of putting things. When you're talking about in conservative circles, when someone calls for confrontation in an inflamed atmosphere, you get riots at the Capitol on January 6th. And there's no reason for anyone to take what she said any other way. Leaders have got to do better when they're standing in front of a microphone.
Michael, if there is an acquittal, how fearful are you that this will be a repeat of the Rodney King riots?
I am saying a constant silent prayer for this country that doesn't happen. If there is an acquittal, even if there's a conviction with manslaughter instead of murder, for manslaughter instead of for murder, I believe that there will be a spasm of violence and a reaction to the question of how do you get justice? When you have a videotape of an apparent murder and you can't get justice in a courtroom, then none of us are safe. How can we be safe from that? My hope is that there won't. My thought is that there will. And I hope that, again, leaders do better in order to try to head off and at least mitigate, if not prevent this type of action. But it will expose an inherent hypocrisy in American culture that will have to be addressed internally and will certainly be assessed all over the world.
Michael, thanks so much for your insight tonight. Really good to hear from you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.